We're as part of a consortium called the C6, which stands for culture, creativity, and collaboration. The three C's for action to combat climate change: culture, creativity, and collaboration to combat climate change. And there are four partner organizations here: Earth Bank, represented by Risha from Sweden. We got Inge representing the whole Norwegian Climate Network. We've got people of 350 and the whole crew that's filming this activity, originally from Romania but based in Denmark. And then Worldview Impact Foundation based in London. And probably this will be our last Erasmus project because the UK has exited the European Erasmus program. And we want to make the best use of this, even though this collaboration is only for 2.5 years. We want it to go beyond the COP and beyond this funding cycle of Erasmus. Hence, we want to work and build bridges with your organization or many more, or the Indian Youth Climate Network, and go beyond the European borders, right? Because climate is not limited just to Europe. So hence, we are gathered here today. Eli wanted to do a game which is so relevant in geopolitics, but we need 20 people for that. Maybe we'll do it later, or maybe tomorrow. But I just want to say thank you so much for giving us a space and holding this boat in front of us, holding this, all the prayers and the spirituality component that you guys are doing for world leaders and decision makers meeting at the blue zone, quite disconnected from this reality that we're trying to co-create together. So thank you very much for having us, and I would like to thank the whole Romanian team that came to document this event, to make these little clips and movies to share with the rest of the world who are not so privileged to be in this circle or to be at COP. Many of those voices are not here, but we need to take our visions and hope and deliberations to them. Okay, so now I'd like to ask Miriam to tell us what her mission is here in COP and tell us a little bit more about her youth network. That is our target group, actually, 200 countries and beyond.
Is deeply involved in humanitarian work for over 60 years in many different nations. Our main program is to train people to go to different spheres of society. We train people for that purpose, to really impact nations. We are a Christian organization. We care for what God's heart is for the nations. So this week we have been really interceding for what's happening with COP26. We've been here before the COP, and we are here till the very end. And we believe that basically praying and interceding will make a change, even in atmosphere. We've been going to streets, praying for ministers and many people who we impact on the streets. There's plenty of different things that came every day that, specifically we felt like praying for. Many leaders and nations who are small and disappearing from the planet. That's been really something that is on my heart and the heart of the people who are here. So I don't know what else would you like to know. We believe that God's care for the nations and for the globe, and so we want to be part of that and make a difference.
People of 2050. We are a small organization based in Copenhagen. We studied climate change, did our master in climate change at Copenhagen University, so we all burn for the topic. We all burn so much that we decided to build our career around this topic. And when we started the master, we met some people at Katowice in 2018, and they inspired us to get into the non-profit sector and start the organization, the People of 2050. It was a common friend that I have with Inge, Hans, which is the founder of that's Bremley, of World Climate School. So in the last few years, we have been implementing different projects, all of them aimed at raising awareness about climate change, mainly with youth, with European youth, because we are working very closely. Let's say our goals and our strategy is very closely bound to the goals and the strategy of the European Commission to become carbon neutral by 2050, and we are trying to bring our small contribution to educating the European society about how to reach that goal, because by 2050 we are hopefully still going to be around, and hopefully the world will be a better place. I have been involved in this project, in the C6 project, ever since its birth. I mean, me together with one of Bremley's colleagues, we put our brains together to write the application, to write the project, to build the concepts, to build the consortium. We invited everyone that we felt like could bring value to the project, such as Bremley, such as Rishab and Inge. And now we are all here, which makes me very happy, I feel like I accomplished something to be here 1 year later. Yes, and I'm not going to speak too much about us because we are all tired of too much speaking. We want more action. That's why we are in Glasgow today. Thank you for listening to me. And
this project is about storytelling. And I mean, I'm a co-founder in Earth Bank, and we started this 2 years ago. It's a climate fintech. But one of the biggest challenges we see in this COP, which is now going on for 26 years, that it's based on this whole story that for human well-being, you need more products and services, and these products and services are based on a certain carbon budget. And in that basically will never work, because the developing world, the global south is saying, look, you owe us trillions of dollars for what you did during the colonial time. And we are way far behind in terms of your lifestyle. So I think what this project is doing is looking at the core. I mean, the three outputs that C6 project is looking at, the first is a foot book or a handbook. It's called Creativity, I Can Save the Planet. And this is supposed to give young people the tools, but I don't think this is just for young people. I think even adults need it.
For sure.
How do I first look at my footprint, and what can I do to reduce it? And what are sort of the case studies, success stories? If you can share about Sukumaji. The second is the climate voices. Who are these people? Who is Greta? What's her story? Who are these? Who's Ashish? What's his story? What is the lifestyle? What are he aspires to, or she aspires to? And the third is about the art of sustainable living, because art of sustainable living is probably the biggest question now. Because if I can live a better life with less material resources, then you don't really need the carbon budget that you are asking for. Because today, if I can be happier with less, no one is saying eat bad food or don't have clean drinking water, but you don't need 3 cars, you don't need 5 houses, you don't need jet planes. And the challenge in the world is that we are actually building those aspirations wherein people are being told, oh, you have a lack of, this Armani, jacket or this Ferrari car. The problem is not that, of course, everyone should have good food and clean drinking water, but is that being measured in GDP? It's not. Probably the only country that's looking at happiness and well-being is Bhutan, seriously. And that is a big problem. And so some of the things in this C6 project, thanks Eli for writing this together with Remdi and others, because when I go and talk to companies in Earth Bank and we start talking about climate neutrality and helping them measure their footprint, they're like, look, we can change, but what do we do about customers and suppliers? How do we change their aspirations? How do we, and to be honest, of course, I don't have the answer. I probably have half of the answer, a little bit of the answer, but I guess we all are sitting with part of the answer, and that's why we need to collaborate. We need our creative minds, and we need a container to navigate us.
That I've done all through, although most of my work is always around helping communities in whatever way possible, mainly realizing their own potential to come up with solutions. So what you just said about creativity, that comes to the fore very much on the ground. And I've been extremely fortunate in also looking at the very top of the pyramid in the whole climate environmental debate. So I've worked with governments, I've worked on advocacy related to climate change, but quite a lot of my work has always been focused on adaptation in the agriculture and the forestry sector, and looking at things from a systemic point of view rather than in silos. So even now we're looking more or less at ecosystemic restoration through forestry. So we look at how to integrate community-based solutions, how to help people manage whatever resources they have in a way that they do not put too much pressure on the forests, at the same time making them the guardians of the forests, or rather making them realize that they do have the guardianship, they've always had it, but they were maybe not as assertive as they are today. Also, I've learned a lot from communities. I've worked all across the country in India, and the kind of diversity that comes across in their cropping systems, in the way they relate to the weather in general, to adaptation in general, and also the various languages, cultures, songs, everything that they do. So from a sociological perspective, I look at how communities come together to sort of build these very complex adaptive systems which help them make sense of the world, but at the same time help us as people to understand our world better. So the way each community relates to each element in the system. So that's been my area of interest for a very long time. So that's what I work with. And also from the other side, I've also looked at programmatic implementation of things. So I look at how to simplify things like decentralized renewable energy solutions for people, how to make them work on the ground. Also look at how do people relate more and more to these conservation measures, to the whole idea of sustainable development goals. And in India, I started working on solutions, so to speak, from the community point of view, to look at how adaptation happens on the ground.
On the ground.
Yes. So I started out as soon as I started my master's. So I've practically been working in this sphere for over 22 years now, and it's been a huge learning for me. But it's also good to bring all those solutions together and discuss them at the central government level in India and then outside of India at these forums, and also to learn how everybody else is doing their work. So from the community point of view, I think knowledge base wise, experience wise, I have quite a bit of it, but I'm still learning. Right now, my focus area is in the northeast of India. Just presently, because of the work that we do related to forestry, it's a hugely biodiverse area. It's like northeast of India put together is more genetically diverse in terms of human beings and the other animal kingdom, the natural world, compared to the rest of India. And then India put together is second in terms of biodiversity only to Africa. So in terms of languages that people speak, in terms of the cultures that one comes across in the country, it's massive. And I really feel we don't do enough justice to it, because there's always this whole idea of universalizing everything in the country, but that is now changing because of a lot of people who are now working at the grassroots level with communities to see how community knowledge can be integrated into the formal education systems that we work in. So while it's important for them to also be able to put their ideas across in a language that others understand, I think it's also important for us to understand where they come from, where is their worldview. So Bremle's home state, Meghalaya, is one where I work with, and even there, if you go, it's always something new that comes up every time you visit the area. So these are the small nuances that we work with, but we try to integrate them into the work that we do on the ground on a larger scale, and also then how to bring the government on board when we say that you need to also diversify your programs, not look at each thing from a one particular angle, and let people decide for themselves what is it that they want to do. So democracy at its best. So in terms of the climate debate, I think it's very important to bring those voices on the table as well, and they are able to articulate themselves much better now. I feel children and youth have done it as well in the country, but it's just that platforms are not visible for them right now. So that was the point when we started working in the Indian Youth Climate Network, and the network itself has had its days where a lot of people have come together, brought in their diverse ideas on the table, and they've worked on their own. The network also taught us that a lot of things in terms of adaptation and mitigation are possible without money, but it has also taught us the importance of finance.
Yeah.
That sometimes you do need it, but many times if people come together, you can affect change on the ground. It's not like you can't. Although these changes might look very small to begin with, but when you put them all collectively together, I guess it makes a difference. So that's been the defining journey so far for me. And I am, of course, quite interested in how the science, society, and nature interface happens. So that's where I work more or less these days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Met you now, which is great, over the past few days. First COP that I've been to, won't be the last, because we need to make more noise, create more action, bring more young people's creativity mindset to the fore and allow them to have the platforms. It seems incredulous that it's their future we're talking about, and yet it's some of the people, the timescales they're talking about are so far out in that future that they won't even be here. And yet they're not necessarily talking about seeds to plant that become the trees under which the shade will provide shade for our future children's or their children or generational children. So I've found that quite, it's been quite a stark recognition when you're here that the lack of children you're seeing around, And I think it's so beautiful that Rishabh made a point of taking his 4.5-year-old son to COP, and he's the youngest delegate with his delegate badge as an observer, and the pictures of him being here and bearing witness to whatever level he's absorbed. They take in more than we realise. I think it's, testament to how things need to change. That's what needs to change for next year. We're talking about climate change. It's actually the COP event change as well. It's open it up to the children, involve them, get their ideas, their creativity, their voices, because they're, as Inga will, you'll see from when she shares with what we're going to do on Thursday, which is unplanned, but we're planning it, we're going to make it happen. Can't tell you what it is yet. What she does is going to be phenomenal, and as a team we're all pulling together, and that's what, that's how we get things done. As a team we go, hey, I'm willing to commit to that and help make that happen, because it will create that action that Ilya was talking about just there in terms of showing it. The youth show the youth, so they go, hey, I can roll my sleeves up, I can be part of that, I want to get behind that. The 100,000 people that were demonstrating as proof of that, they're going, why aren't we at that event? It's for us as much as for you. So I'm fully committed to it with Brownlee and my new adopted family.
So thanks first of all for organizing this talk, and great to hear from everyone. And I think there's a big, huge diversity even in this small group. So nice to see that. So at Indian Youth Climate Network basically tries to simplify the language of climate change communications, the complex negotiations, and how to actually encourage youth of the country to take actions, not just talk about it. Everybody is talking about it, and we understand that since education, the climate change in education is inbuilt, it has been 20 years. So youth does understand that there is a problem, But how to address that problem? There is information gap. That once you know there is a problem, you also know how to solve it. But when you actually do something on ground, then things are very different. So this is the background that we are coming from. And to do this now we have technology. So therefore you can scale up climate action. When you talk about collective action, then it is very easy to scale up using technology. And very young people, even a 5-year-old child today knows how to operate a computer, right? So that is one thing. But yeah, climate change communication is one of the keys. And also people like lot of youth of the country think that maybe they are responsible for climate change because it's the narrative that if you do these small things you can make a big change, which is it's not like that, it's incorrect. But they should also see the bigger picture, how these artificial demands have been pushed. So they should see that bigger picture, and we should figure out a way how to communicate this message, and whatever actions that they're taking, even if it's small action, how exactly are you going to scale that up so that it can make a big big impact. So yeah, that's all. Over to you.
So not different continent, but of course same world. And yeah, for me it's also the second, like the first UNFCCC COP, but then the second COP in terms of the COPs, and I see it as a global circus, and the show must go on, and I come here not as a scientist or an engineer, but I come here with an open mind to see the pains of people, the indigenous community, also to identify what we can do as a collective in terms of bringing the message of climate change more to people back in India and to people back in different other places, for example Africa, where there is much more poverty and drudgery than probably the other part. So I love food, music, art. I'm here to enjoy COP. I'm not as very serious, like people do. Of course, people kick me out also sometimes. And yeah, I also love campaigns. I do like people like Greta, but not much,
Like, but not much.
Not much. Yeah, I also understand that voices and initiatives like you people are trying in Europe, they are quite scalable, and we have to kind of move forward with a lot of noises. Not here, maybe we are only 10, 12, but maybe as you said that COP27, we should also be with drums and some kind of plays or some kind of thing at the center to show that this is a kind of thing which could change. And I have seen people doing that. I've seen a lot of initiatives already. I was yesterday attending an initiative by University of Michigan and Michigan Institute of Technology, and they have come up with an initiative called YEAH, Y-E-A-H, and it's also on climate change education. So I see a lot of synergy which could go around globally through this C6 thing. And I think you people, like Rishabh is my good friend, and I'm also here for you all people, not for the politician and other thing.
I love the circus metaphor. It starts with C.
Climate circus. That's climate circus.
It's
Climate circus, biggest climate circus.
The biggest climate circus on the planet. We're going to create that because we want to emphasize something that circus do. They have a playground. And if, for example, if you do like a very complicated artistic thing, you have to have trust.
Yep.
You have to catch the arms, and you have to take your friend, turn it around triple times, and the other friend is catching that friend.
Yeah.
This is trust. So I've seen that circus, the modern circus in Stockholm also. But creativity, for me, and the C6, yes, we started off as 6 different youth organizations in Europe. The Nordics with the people of 2050 from Denmark, Earth Bank in Sweden, and the Norwegian Climate Network in Norway. And we have UK, very important to have the UK with us, because as you are, the youth of UK are not part of the EU-funded processes through Erasmus Plus and other Erasmus projects. We want to still be united in Europe. And I'm also saying that this C6 World project, we have our partners, and we have our 2 other partners in the creative industries of museums. So we're working with the Casa Margologica and the people, Museum 68 in Copenhagen. And our deliveries is actually towards January 2023 to have a synchronized parallel output in all creative industries in Europe and in the world. But rightly, as you said, that C6 is about collaboration, it's about creativity, and I think it's also not about prolonging it too far into the future. Even if you have people of 2050 with us, we're working on scenario thinking and long-term thinking. But what we like to do is to bring the future back into right now, because we're talking about justice. Some people are suffering already, right now as we speak. And that is where we actually have to allocate our best minds and hearts into a new way of thinking. And I believe that C6 and this the C6 can have call it a spiritual reference, because if we talk about creativity, it's not about the big circus. Creativity is also happening very on a small scale. It's creativity force of a seed to be a small tree and a flower, or it is creative force of everything. And I think to bring that the creativity back into our societies, so we're not like making creativity as something that artists that you're doing on the sideline, but it's like we're making food. That's the creative change that we like to see. But the other thing is the system thinking behind the food system, or potato or carrot or even rice, if you take basic nutrition. The water used in rice preparing is something. Potato cultivation is another thing. But we have to see the patterns or the value chain behind it. And that is to really train ourselves on a different level of thinking. And of course, we don't need to mention that if we talk about meat production, industrial meat production, it's a wrongdoing when it comes to justice to animals, but also to the water and the rivers, or deep water pollution through industrial farming. But that is, so that's, yes, change happens in the kitchen. It happens the way we eat, the lifestyling of our lives. And that's why I think the next COP should be a celebration of the life that we can create that is kind of flourishing and better right now, but not right now in the best possible way. Yeah. So that's why we use with festivals.
Carnival, there's another thing.
We can also have carnivals. We also have carnivals. We have festivals, music, food festivals, everything, everywhere on the planet can be done on that, on a joyful speed of celebrating life as we have it. And that is the best role model we can be in this maybe challenging times that is coming ahead of us, that we can be together and that we can work together, collaborate together, find solutions together, think outside the box together. With reference to COP26 here in Glasgow, I'd hope to see that it could be really a celebration for the creative force in humanity to find solutions. Because of course in the streets of Glasgow we see beautiful art, expensive art and posters of all kinds and colors, beautiful. But if they've been using to support people in troubled times, right now, it will be something different. So yes, Fridays for Future with Greta Thunberg, we celebrate her bravery, but we also say that in a time due to COVID, when children are not in school, schools have been closed for 2 years, and we're talking not 1,000 children, we're talking about close to 1 billion children has not been in school. So what we have to do is to use our creativity to get children back into schools and learn that universal education on climate justice, climate educational programs should be given free to all children and all schools on the planet as fast as we can.
Hi, my name is Alexander de Bornay. I'm a founder of Music for Climate Justice initiative that was spawned during Climate Week during the 75th anniversary of the United Nations in New York. As you may recall, at that time, the streets were desolate, no one was going out, there was no entertainment factor for people to really kind of embrace what was going on, and this new organization was spawned at that time called Music for Climate Justice because we wanted to give a voice to the voiceless and highlight the importance of the indigenous peoples around the world and the impoverished people from around the world, and really highlight all of their artistry, all of their culture, all of their contributions to society, and also highlight the fact that these particular sectors of people are disproportionately impacted by carbon emissions that they do not really contribute to on the scale of the biggest industrialized nations in the world. So we were very fortunate to partner up with UNDP, the International Chamber of Commerce, Ocean Institute, Guardians of the Forest, just a wonderful group of like-minded individuals from all parts of the world looking to highlight this importance of the indigenous people's plight. And we had a wonderful event on November 4th, which is still going on right now, that people can tune into, with over 350 musicians from all over the world representing their countries and their culture. I'm honored to be a part of your circle here and the work that C6 is doing. I believe that creativity is really the conduit to a lot of out-of-the-box thinking of how we can remedy the world's problems. The creative people that I know that are in the advertising agencies or in the Hollywood studios really are not present, unfortunately, other than Leonardo DiCaprio, that everyone knows, obviously, because of his stature and his commitment to combating climate change. But what I'm most interested in is creating more consciousness within those communities, which have a lot of influence and could contribute a lot to various art organizations, because these big media giants have a lot of money and a lot of influence. So it's really, I like to think of myself as a connector between all sorts of organizations such as yourselves, and finding ways to build bridges, because that's what we need, is more radical collaboration out of every organization around the world. And so I am humbled to be a part of this process, and hopefully we will create new, more fair policies through this collaboration as we start to influence the delegates and the policymakers in politics to really start not just focusing on solutions for the richest nations that have the means to adapt to climate change, but to really start focusing on how we can take care of all of us, including the animal kingdom, both on Earth and in the oceans, which are severely impacted, obviously, from our industrialized societies. So really to create these bridges and alliances is what I'm here to do, and as I look around, all of you have such big hearts and grand visions as to what is possible, and so I think we must find more ways to create these hubs and also highlight the importance of the spiritual connection to ourselves, our inner goals, as how that pertains to the Sustainable Development Goals around the world, because this is a very important new way to communicate how we are all interconnected, and through the wisdom of the sacred words of all of the different religious peoples from around the world, we find this common ground, and I think that's what makes us so human, and I think this is a wonderful way to start this radical collaboration that I mentioned before. So I
Ooh. Okay, I got goosebumps. Yes, I have a workshop that David and me, we developed and we are implementing during our training courses in Copenhagen. And it's a funny game where the youngsters get to learn a little bit about how these COP negotiations are going on, and they get to get the big picture that it's not so easy to reach an agreement. And yeah, we were thinking maybe we can do it all together. What do you think about that?
Let's call these gentlemen there, the negotiators.
Yeah.
I was trying to get some land in Africa.
nice one.
So, well, which I believe, at the same time, I urge others to be real life oriented. Because academic way, we cannot carry forward any further. Because at this juncture of climate crisis, which is not an economic model. So this is what the core, and this is the crux of the moment. There's this sort of things to be embedded in economics, and that should be the real life economics and new economics. I mean, to simplify that way. Okay. So, as you understand, when something like economics, that people mean model and graph and things, and something like econometrics, these are all fashionable. That doesn't combine people and the planet. Okay, so people without the thought of planet, humanity cannot be exposed in terms of relations, which relate to sociology, social science, soil science, physics, everything. So this is very diverse embodiment in terms of economics. That has to happen. Well, Nobel Prizes are going to the economics for their own purpose, not the people's. Anything there. Because, I mean, even one Nobel Prize was on climate, but there was nothing of this sort. People were there, and they are thinking. Okay. So what happens? What are doing at this grassroots? At the bottom or here, that will be translated globally as a new way. And I was meaning this way, I was telling him, well, the youth or the young people have become the bandwagon for others to play. No, there is no chance. It has to be translated into my action. That could be climate action, that could be financial, that could be insurance, that could be economics, everything. So I believe, well, it's a good alliance. Good thing we have been now. I should say we're getting in the process of being integrated. Let there be a move for the future. I mean, we can combine things, and then the instincts and all aspirations could be translated into institution. He's from environmental economics. He was mentioning about Joshua Stiglitz the other day. I liked it because he's very much with that sort of ideas. Of course, all of you with real life things. You are doing economics in your own life, but someone to brand this is economics. So that has to be taken at the forefront of our thinking. C6 World and colleagues are now here. So, this is an experiment in real time. Why? I tell you one thing. Very frankly, I did the other journal of social business. You can imagine with Professor Mohammad Yunus. So I had the Global Assembly 2010, when that journal was launched. It's my brainchild, don't mind, I will say this way. At that point of time, I had this ISSN sanction from British Library, 2010, now 2021. I stopped there, okay, because things should take the shape. It is COVID-19 made me reinforced for getting it into a limelight, to get on the ground. Because COVID-19 exposed the perils of capitalism or the traditional or the conventional social order. You can imagine, everything stopped. Lockdown, one simple thing. Everything gone. Nothing was working. Okay. So you can imagine last 20 months has given us a lesson. And COP26, I appreciate the heroine of the situation, Greta. He branded one thing. I was meaning it a couple of times. What we are doing, this is greenwashing festival. It is not the real climate action, not real climate emergency we are addressing. So he can pick from there. I mean, to be honest, it's high economics. I salute from my own, because what economists were not able to do or politicians could not do, she has done by one sentence. What we are doing, that is not climate change. I will not say blah, blah, blah anymore. This is greenwashing festival. So now I believe C6 World and your colleagues working together is a real hope. I mean, at least you can make a jolt in the traditional ideas, in the thought of the political leaders in action. I mean, even Greta has been taken place in my journal. I've shown her, okay, because she jolted some sort of political action to come forward. Little happening because of her, very, very clearly. Okay, and you see, 2009, Gordon Brown in Copenhagen was made a pointer about $100 billion. In 10, 11 years, didn't happen anything. You can imagine? What do we like? All blame game. Third world countries or the developing countries, they're in the process of development. India, Bangladesh, even China, even they don't brand China a developed country, whereas they feed the world because they have lost all the manufacturing structures in the developed countries. China was providing, to be honest, no prejudice, China was providing the all face masks to the world, every corner, PPI. India was struggling because the politicians, raw old ideas, because they were not containing the kind of havoc happened in the peak of Corona. 450,000 infections a day, at 24,000 deaths. You can have seen.
No, it was great.
Yeah, really. I mean, you can imagine the politicians held back India, could show the way. All the good ideas, Nobel laureates are being produced in our zone. Mohammad Yunus, Amartya Sen, Abhijit Banerjee, and Rabindranath. So many. Tagore in literature. You can imagine. Okay, it's a breeding ground of ideas and thoughts. But the political leaders in India, with all sectarian feeling, made it backward. So it has been a test case for all of us, making things moving. I mean, India and other third world countries could be a pointer, make headway,
Yes.
not to remain stalemate at the 2050. What we can realistically contribute, let it happen. China and India made progresses in, climate action. Okay, let it happen. They are playing the pressure game. In their own course of development, they are not bothering about pollution. The government's inaction, even if you take my pre-industrial age onward, or the industrial revolution, they were contributing the pollution. It is not one day creation. It happened 250 years of pollution, seriously. So, developed countries, industrial countries are the contributors of this climate crisis. Whereas, to urge third world countries or developing countries to be on a carbon neutral economy, low carbon economy. Okay, let's finish. Okay, so what happens? They should compensate. They should disperse the fund to be accumulated, $100 billion in the 5 years' time. That would make progress. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's a breeding ground. You do it. Go ahead. Sorry.
No,
Well,
it's
from the economist to the physicist.
So I'm Peter Fikowski. I'm a physicist by inclination and training. And my main theme has been climate restoration. So I'm bringing to the COP the idea that our goal is to restore a climate that humans have survived long term. Now, it's sort of obvious, right? But then, it's like many secrets. It's a secret until you say it. And then once you say it, then everyone knew it. So if you listen to the news, think of everything you've heard about the IPCC and climate and net zero. Have you ever heard anyone say that we can survive net zero? No one's ever said that. And there are some smart people who could say it if they thought it was possibly true. And no one says that. Now the good news, that's the bad news. The good news is, like, if I said, you know what, we all have to get to New York tomorrow morning, it would be done, right? We would find a way, we would find the tickets, and it would be done. And so once you say, okay, we're going to restore the climate, we're going to get the 1 trillion tons of CO2 out by 2050. Now if you look at the graph, CO2 went up like this. Yeah, of course we can bring it down like that. Really? Okay, we've never done it before, but we did this, and we can do that. And as a physicist, I can tell you how, but I don't want to bore you with the technical details. But just as a non-physicist, of course we can. And why haven't we? Well, because no one punched the GPS to 300 parts per million by 2050. And this is interesting. I'm going to say it in an embarrassing way, and then we'll find a nice way to say it. Why didn't you punch the GPS? It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I just leave us for a second of silence, like, wow. This isn't make it wrong. This is like, oh my God, I'm part of this. It's not them. How come you didn't punch the GPS to 300 parts per million, or to restore a sustainable climate? We're all in it together, and we're human. Probably it's because we never had to. And it's sort of like, why aren't you standing on a ceiling? Yeah, we've seen movies of people standing on ceilings. Well, we never had to. Thank you very much. If we had to, we could all be standing on the ceiling. Maybe you take a day to strengthen our abdominal muscles. But you see, my point is, it's just a new thought, and a new thought is hard. And what's wonderful about the circle is it's a circle. We're all in it together. I can't wait to meet Greta, perhaps in your program in June. The climate the climate got framed as an us them, like they did it to us. Why would we do that? Well, because we do that to everything. That's part of our human design, right? If you're walking down a trail and you hear you don't think, oh, I think that was a stick. Your brain, in a thousandth of a second, says, oh my God, I wonder if there's whatever your favorite enemy is. This is 1,000 times faster than any thought you can possibly have. Your brain goes there. And so, of course, we frame climate as who's out to kill me? Is it the oil companies? Is it the capitalists? Is it the academics? Academics.
Sorry. The fading part.
No, but we're all in it. We're all in it together. And what's great about the circle is we can breathe together and realize, oh, of course we thought it was them, and it's actually us. And inside that us, we can communicate to the people who hold the wheel, who hold the tiller. Because on a ship, the guy who holds the tiller is not a big mucky-muck. The guy who holds the tiller, is dressed more like you than like me. And so we just have to figure out who's holding the tiller and set the GPS to restore the climate. But we can only, you can't, if you come to the guy holding the tiller with a knife, it's not going to go well. The ship is not, we don't know where the ship's going to go, but the ship is not going to go where you're thinking you want it to go. If you go with a cup of tea and you say, oh, we're actually going to the safe harbor, you can then go back down to your stateroom and he'll take care of everything from there.
Great.
So that's why we're here.
We've got 10 minutes to clear this room.
Maybe I'm pronouncing
It's fine.
it's a Hindi
Hindi.
name of a village in India
Okay.
where she was working.
Just outside of Delhi, it's about 200 kilometers away from the capital city. There's another city called Chandigarh. So Sukhamajri is a small village of farmers and people who keep animals. Primarily, they sell milk there. Not they don't keep sheep and all that much. But so the story goes that Chandigarh city has a large lake outside where people used to go boating, and it was very scenic. And it started silting up. Every year the water level was decreasing. It was silting up, and then sometimes when the monsoons came, water would overflow. So people tried to find out what the reason was, and there's a soil institute there in Chandigarh, and one of the scientists working there, he decided to take a walk along one of the main channels that used to feed the lake. So it's a man-made lake, but they made sure that there was a source of water that was coming in, and when he walked up, he realized that all this silt is coming primarily from the land that belongs to this village of around 200 households. And he decided to see why that was happening, and he realized that there are no trees, nothing, and the village lies in the foothill of the Himalayas, where the mountains are primarily made out of earth. They don't have too many stones or anything in them, and this was a heavily forested area, and the forests were cut down primarily for the expansion of the city itself. So these people did not have anywhere else to go, so they converted their own forest land into grassland to sustain their animals and into farmland. So he started asking people what can be done, because there's too much silt in the water in the lake, and these people said, we couldn't be bothered. What do we do about your lake? It's your lake, not ours. So he started talking to a lot of civil society people there, and there's a very well-known activist, Dr. Madhu. She is an architect by profession. She started talking to this scientist as well, and they started going to the village every day to ask them what can be done to improve the conditions in the village, because we want to really stem this siltation in the lake and improve your conditions as well. So that's when people started having a nightly discussion there, and the elders in the village said that instead of looking for solutions outside, the best thing would be for you to help us recreate the forest that we had, and then all of us to divide responsibility among ourselves and take care of it. So gradually over about a year's time, this system was developed wherein the villagers came together, decided to cordon off the entire area, plant trees, and then all the water that was retained in the village reservoirs that were there, as well as the channel that used to flow into the Sukhna lake, that's the name of the lake that's there in Chandigarh. Yeah. So they decided to divide the water rights among everyone, including the landless. So that was the pioneering solution, because they brought everybody, including the landless, on board, and the landless, because they had no use for that water, would sell their water rights to the landed. So everybody got an equal share in the village, regardless of how much land you owned or did not own. And the landless could sell their rights and still earn money, and there was a committee in place that used to take care of the money distribution and also upkeep of the channels, as well as look after the forest. So they planted a mixed forest, but they also had acacia catechu. It's a tree that's utilized to make katha. And it's also medicinal. It goes into a lot of medicines, the secretion of the tree. So the forest department was gradually made in charge of this area, because as trees grew, they became state property. But the village itself is a very good case study, because within 10 years, they were able to turn their fortunes around, and from being a non-decrepit, poor village, they were among the highest per capita income villages in the country. So the per capita income from being in thousands of rupees had gone into millions for each household, and they became very rich. So actually the model was documented very well and written about in the late 1990s, and after that they've inspired a lot of other case studies cases within the communities surrounding the village, but also outside. So Sukhomaji became a huge celebration, but when I went to the village again in 2007 to find out what's going on, things were on the decline, because the forest department now started seeing the value of the trees that had grown. Each tree was worth something around 1 to 1.5 million rupees. So they wanted to now cut those trees and sell them and keep the profits. And the community said, if you do that, we will burn the entire forest down, and we will burn everything that's there, and your Sukhna lake will go to hell, and we will not allow you to plant anything here. But because the forest department is very powerful and the state government intervened, those trees are still standing, but the money that was supposed to come to the community has not come in. So, but because the community is now also rich, children have started moving out of agriculture and animal husbandry, and they are into other jobs. So it's a village that only has old people now, but economically they are still doing very well. There are other cases though, similar to the Sukhomaji case in Pune, it's in the western state of Maharashtra in India, that are continuing for the last 40 years, because they all came together, decided to change things around, similar to the Sukhomaji model. But they are continuing because people are still very much in control over their resource base. So whatever they are protecting, whatever money they are earning out of it, they are putting it back into the ecology. So now that has become a movement of more than 40 villages, and the district has become the richest district in the country, which was at one point in time in the north. One of the districts in the north was the richest, but now they are the richest, and they are again an agrarian economy, the entire district. So that district is around, I think, 300 kilometers from Mumbai. Ahmednagar it's called, and the villages there are now today the richest in the country, but they've not gone the Sukhomaji way. They are teaching kids in schools right from kindergarten level about rainwater harvesting, about organic agriculture, and about keeping the village community together. So kids, the best part was when you go to the schools or if you interact with people, anybody in the village can tell you the village's story. And the responsibility is on rotation basis, because somebody has to take care of the rainwater harvesting, somebody has to take care of the agricultural produce, and also they have a water budgeting system now in place. So somebody takes care of that. So families are given on a rotation basis yearly duties to maintain these. So everybody has a stake. They do have leaders which have continued for the last 30 years or so, but the community is able to maintain it still. So that's a bigger example than even the Sukhomanjri one, because they are still continuing. Economically, they're doing very well, and socially also they've been able to maintain, preserve the fabric the way they wanted it to. So some of the students are, some of the villagers are now in the US and studying, but they still, come back to the village, so to speak. So they've been able to actually get people who had traveled out of the village to come back, because life in the village is much better than the city now. It's much more cleaner, water is much more cleaner and healthier.
But I think this is like we all have like a Sukhomanjri, right? Like we all have a community that this can happen. And what is amazing is that since we're in the church, next year in Egypt, it would be really beautiful to see if restoration in Sinai can happen, because Mount Sinai has a similar story, and it's a biblical story. Maybe Bradley can tell about what happened. But 3-4 years back, I hosted a group of people who were working with the Palestinians, with the Egyptians, with the Israelis, to see how they can restore the siltation of the Lake Sinai and the restoration of Mount Sinai. It's a much bigger, peace story. But I think stories like this can really empower people, inspire them to do something, because it's real, it's concrete, and builds ownership.
Not so much move land, but regreen and reforest it. Give it back.
But also governance. I think the key thing here is how you are collaborating. Building these committees, sharing.
Well, look at the nations that are represented just here.
Yeah.
This is the United Nations.
The community in this church plays a very important role as a beacon of hope for all the young people, and many other organizations like Tear Fund and Christian Aid. They have a very important role to engage communities, not only here but around the world. So I would just like you to just share a little bit about you do, and thank you for hosting us here. And how has your experience been so far with this COP?
Oh, it's
Come in a circle. Come in.
It's been an odd experience. I've not been here long. I started here in May, so very much going, oh my goodness, COP's happening in our parish. What do we do? But actually, it's been really interesting, fascinating to see what's going on, engaging with different people in different ways. The team upstairs in particular, the YWAM guys have been out on the streets every day, doing different things. They've been busking, kind of singing into the streets and talking to people, asking people. We've got a world map upstairs they took out into, I think, the park, and they asked people to say, where are you from, and tell us something positive that your nation brings. Tell us something about your country, and actually what it's bringing. So rather than saying, oh, this country is doing bad things, this, oh, America, or this and all that, it was actually, no, tell us something good about your country, where you're from. And so we've got this wonderful map of positive things actually about the world, and recognising that for all there might be good and bad things that are happening as part of COP, actually that there is a whole lot of positive that's going on. It's different things like that, and I've really just been in the background, kind of trying to make everything run smoothly as much as possible. But it's been, 2 weeks like there never has been, nor ever will be again, I suspect, in Glasgow. But it's been great to hear some of the conversations that have gone on, just with individuals, people on the train, delegates, residents, visitors, the whole lot.
This is a vessel of hope, and we want you to tell us what is this for. I mean, I can see the Christian Aid flag on the top, but
Christian Aid. So there's the banner outside, and then this is just kind of obviously people making books and writing their prayers on them.
Yeah.
And then gradually they've been filling it up, and it's going to do a tour of Scotland. I believe it's staying here for a couple of weeks, but they're going to move it around different churches around Scotland over the coming months to sort of keep on sending it on its journey and giving its message.
It reminds me of that the Lake of Galilee sailing.
Yeah.